I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Welcome back, young scholars. In this video, we'll be talking about the legislative process with a little bit of assist from Schoolhouse Rock. We'll be answering this big question: how does a bill become a law? Where do we start? The legislative process starts with an idea.
When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill.
So where do ideas for bills come from? Schoolhouse Rock says that a lot of bills come from just average ordinary citizens. That's maybe the case occasionally. I mean, ideas do sometimes come from ordinary citizens. Sometimes the actual members of Congress write their own bills. Most likely, though, most bills are being written by congressional staffers or maybe interest groups. And finally, most definitely, a lot of bills are written by lawyers. If you've ever read one and you get lost in all of the fine language and legalese, it's pretty clear that a lot of bills were written by lawyers because they're pretty incomprehensible. Every bill starts out as simply an idea, and it's typically identifying some sort of problem that could be solved through some change in policy or legislative action. Once a bill is written, it can be introduced by a member of Congress in either the House or the Senate. You must, though, be a member of Congress. You or I cannot go and try and get a bill introduced in Congress that we wrote. You have to have bills introduced through members of Congress, and this process can start in either the House or the Senate. Now let's just assume that we're going to start our bill in the House of Representatives. So a bill is introduced by a member of the House, and at that point it is assigned, typically in the House of Representatives, by the Speaker of the House to a committee for review. We talked about the various committees that exist that focus on certain responsibilities and how the committee process works. There's really a gatekeeping function. The chair of the committee gets to determine what bills get heard. Now, who becomes the chair of the committee? Well, the chair of the committee is determined by the majority party. In this case, you have Republicans who are in the minority, and so are they allowed to bring their bills and introduce them into these committees? Heck no. The majority party alone has that power. In this case, the chair of the committee gets to decide which bills are taken up, and so the chairperson from the majority party has this gatekeeping authority and gets to decide which bills are going to be addressed by the committee. Oftentimes, committees will then hold hearings where they will call experts to discuss the bills that are being proposed. In this next video, you'll see Jon Stewart, who was a comedian, but also has been an advocate to provide health care for the first responders on 9/11.
Behind me, a filled room of 9/11 first responders. And in front of me, a nearly empty Congress. Sick and dying, they brought themselves down here to speak. And no one. Shameful. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it is a stain on this institution. There is not a person here, there is not an empty chair on that stage that didn't tweet out, "Never forget the heroes of 9/11. Never forget their bravery. Never forget what they did, what they gave to this country." Well, here they are. And these men and women and their response to it is what brought our country back. It's what gave a reeling nation a solid foundation to stand back upon, to remind us of why this country is great, of why this country is worth fighting for. And you are ignoring them. They did their jobs. Courage, grace, tenacity, humility. 18 years later, do yours.
So in that video, Jon Stewart was speaking on behalf of the many 9/11 first responders who were experiencing health problems. He was speaking in front of the Judiciary Committee, and that's what committees do. They hold hearings oftentimes with experts to try and get some more information so that they can make sensible decisions in terms of making changes or amendments to the bills that are proposed. So committees are a very important part of the legislative process. The committee holds hearings, they meet and discuss, they amend and ultimately vote on whether or not to what's called report out the bill.
Well, now I'm stuck in committee and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
And it turns out that most bills do in fact die in committee. Yikes. So committees are where most bills die. There are tens of thousands of bills introduced each year, and the vast majority of them never get reported out of committee, but ultimately are put through the paper shredder. If the committee does report out the bill, vote favorably on the bill in committee, then the bill then proceeds to the full House for further discussion, amendments, and voting. So there is a floor session where members get to make short speeches, either in favor or in opposition to the bill. And the Speaker of the House ultimately gets to decide and control what bills make it to the House floor. They get to prioritize and establish a legislative agenda. And so whichever party controls that majority gets to essentially decide which bills are taken up in the House of Representatives.
Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, because once a bill is passed by the House, it must pass through the Senate as well before being sent to the president. So the whole process starts all over again. In this case, in the Senate, the bill is introduced by a member of the Senate, assigned to a Senate committee for review. The committee then holds hearings, they meet, discuss, they amend, and they ultimately vote on the bill. If the bill makes it out of committee, then it proceeds to a full Senate for further discussion, amendments, and voting. And then the Senate Majority Leader has control over what bills make it to the Senate floor for a vote. The Senate Majority Leader has a lot of power about which bills to take up on the Senate floor. We just went through what this would look like if a bill was first introduced in the House. The flip could also be true. We could start a bill first in the Senate. It could be introduced by a member of the Senate. It could then be assigned to committee. If it's reported out of committee, it can then go to the full Senate floor for discussion and voting. Once it is passed by the Senate, it then has to go to the House where it starts all over again. If the House and the Senate pass different bills, so the Senate passes one version of a bill and the House passes a different version of the bill, the next step is that it goes to something called a conference committee. The two versions of the bill are brought to a conference committee where there are members of both the House and the Senate who then meet and try and resolve and reconcile the differences between the two versions of the bill. When the conference committee produces that reconciled version of the bill, it is brought back to both chambers for another vote, and then if both chambers agree on a single final version, at that point the bill proceeds.
If they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be along. I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill. Now you're a law. Oh, yes.
Once there is a final version of the bill that has been passed by both the House and the Senate, then it proceeds to the president's desk, where he or she may choose just to sign the bill, in which case that bill then becomes a law. However, the president has that power of veto, one of the checks the president has over the legislative branch. And if the president vetoes the bill, then it goes back to Congress yet again. But Congress does have the ability to override that veto. It requires a 2/3 majority vote in both the House and the Senate. But if both the House and the Senate override the veto, then the bill then becomes a law. So each year, over 10,000 bills are introduced in Congress, both in the House and the Senate. It's kind of like a sausage grinder. And you don't always want to see how the sausage is made, but in the end, there are some bills that come out of the House and the Senate that are ultimately signed by the president. And so every year, approximately 300 bills actually make it through this entire process and become laws. So after watching this video, you should be able to answer this big question: how does a bill become a law? As always, thanks for watching.